right, recording.
We are go for invasion.
Alrighty, he should be up just about now. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to an anime story podcast.
Hello.
It's the 3rd of November. Halloween has passed us. Welcome. I'm the Big Bad Moon. Right up here on the right is Hallen 3D. Below me is Bad Strategy. We are your hosts for an anime story podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about Samurai Champloo, the first half of the season, of the show. Let me make sure that all the levels are correct. Mandy, how are you doing today, Hallen 3D?
Hi, I'm doing good. Enjoying the snow. It's snowing like crazy here. We've got about 4 or 5 inches.
Yes, it is. It has been snowing in various places around the state. Bad Strategy, how are you doing?
I am good. Solid. Feeling great.
Mm-hmm. So, this last week we watched the first half of Samurai Champloo. As a note for anybody, we are going to be watching, if we watch a series and there's more than one season, or there's more than like 13 or 14, 15 episodes, we're just going to watch the first half. So Samurai Champloo is 23 episodes, I think, thereabout. So we watched to, I think, like episode 13, and then we were like, it's a lot of anime for one week.
Definite midpoint episode, Jake. It's not.
Well, no, there's never too much.
There's never.
It was a lot.
Yeah. Anyways, it was a definite midpoint episode, and that it was when the writers were like, "We need to throw in a recap episode so people don't forget." I think if there were a seasonal divide, that would be the seasonal divide.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the recap episode was super clever though, because they did it as reading back her journal.
Mm-hmm.
And
That was funny.
kind of
That was quite funny several times.
It was. I do think it was reasonably well handled. It was definitely a full-on recap episode.
Yeah, it was full-on recap. It wasn't. Yeah.
But I said earlier time.
I think that I would say that it's probably good that they didn't go part way, right? Because when an episode is partially a recap episode and partially new content, it can get a little frustrating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair.
And yeah, so I would say them going all the way with the recap is probably a good decision.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. I'm generally not a big fan of recap episodes. It was fun how they did it. At least they didn't just straight up have a narrator recap the first half of the show.
Right.
It was actually there was a narrative flow in it, which was great. My least favorite thing is when they just stop the show and they're like, okay, here's what has happened for the first whatever part.
God, like
Blah,
in
blah, blah,
Nadia,
blah, 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 blah.
like in Nadia, they do the old lady who misremembers everything.
That's also that in that show she narrates things that don't happen or that I didn't think happened, but
I didn't.
What do I know? So Samurai Champloo. Mandy, I know you've seen it before, way back in the day. I had not.
I've seen it a few times.
You've seen it a few times. No, I know. Or Bad Strategy. I know you have seen it a lot, or you saw it before.
Yes.
And you're rewatching it. This is the first time I've watched it. I have not seen past the recap episode, so if I am missing some crucial, important piece of plot information, I'm sorry. We are going to probably be doing the second half of Samurai Champloo next week, so we can round out the series. It's a relatively prolific series, so I think it's worthy of a couple of episodes.
I would like to ask a question.
Please, let's get started.
Samurai Champloo is very frequently compared to Cowboy Bebop, and I'm certainly able to be like, this feels like Cowboy Bebop. My question is it just the voice actor, or are there like deeper connections that tie the two shows together in terms
I am
of
so glad you said that because my husband said the same thing.
Uh-huh.
He wondered the same thing. Like,
yes.
are they in some kind of bubble universe, like way out and way before? Who knows? I don't know.
So I have a couple of, because I thought about that over the course of watching the first half as well. I think certainly it has to do with the voice actor. Super prolific voice actor. What is his name? I don't remember. But the voice actors, I think it has a similar tone in a way. Different choice of music. Cowboy Bebop, it's kind of jazzy. Exciting. It has the theme song for Cowboy Bebop is Tank, which is a great and so this has a kind of this show tonally is kind of similar. It has a very similar tone.
There's a very like finalistic, realistic kind of tone that occurs in the show that might be shared between the two.
Yeah, no, they have a very people. These are it's not. They have a very similar tone in that these are not superheroes. These are not bigger than life characters. These are people. They're really good at what they do, but they're people and they're deeply flawed. And they're kind of greedy and they kind of have their own motivations. And it's also the group coming together thing. Not an uncommon thing, but relatively similar in how that's accomplished in both the shows. I certainly think there are a lot of similarities to Cowboy Bebop. I would say, while they do have a lot of similarities, they are very distinct in a lot of ways. But definitely the voice acting, the kind of tone, and the way that the characters feel, I think that all contributes a lot to the two shows having a lot in common.
I have to give props too because the voice acting in it is so specific, and the words that they choose to pop are so well rounded that I feel like you get the information very clearly. So everything comes across as natural regardless. So you really kind of fall into it, and I appreciate that in the animes because I know some you don't have that and they don't understand what they're saying, and then it's really it becomes muddy. And I loved how specific they were.
No, that's absolutely fair. Overall in that sense, I think that really, really well, just kind of polished, really well polished, and actually as a show, kind of all around, really well polished.
Do you think the episodic style of the show is something it has in common with Cowboy Bebop? Because it's a bit episodic. It's also the characters kind of struggling to make it by, which is similar, right?
Yeah.
Cowboy Bebop's very much theme. That down to earth, God, we gotta pay our bills next month. How are we gonna do that?
I think they both have episodes in which all the characters are just hungry and they need money so they can eat.
Which is kind of funny too. I mean, it's kind of an interesting stakes because then she's like, oh, and then she enters that competition and she's like, food, I need all the food.
Right. That was, no, absolutely. That. But let me see.
That was one of my favorite episodes. And I like how she's all after.
Yeah, she's all that.
So the episodic nature of the show, the episodes, or the episodic nature of the episodes, fabulous.
You gotta be careful when using that word.
No, so the nature of each episode as being very self-contained and being very much about a certain thing. This is something that I thought was a huge strength of the show. So far, first half, because it's kind of complicated. The first half of the show so far, each individual episodes. This is a great strength of Cowboy Bebop as well. It's a great strength of the show Firefly. This is a great strength of some of the latter half of the show Buffy. But each episode carries a very specific theme, and all the characters are playing into the theme. And it is a very prevalent thing that the episode is about this thing, and a lot of the characters deal with that in their own ways. And that's really great thematically, episode per episode, that makes them work very cohesively as individual episodes. I liked, I'm trying to think of, like, they were, let me see, the one where they're talking about, like, the character development episode for,
Gene?
Jin?
Gene?
Yeah.
Gene.
Character development episode for, John, they call him. Because it's Jin. I assume it's Jin?
It's Gene.
Gene? Yeah, Gene. That's what
His name is Gene.
Excellent, Gene.
So
Character episode,
Joe.
character development episode,
Joe's episode?
for Jen. For Gene. Now, don't say it wrong too many times, because I will start saying it incorrectly. But that episode about great, interesting. There's a woman who he meets on a bridge, and they have a little interaction, and he finds out that she is going to be working at the brothel because her husband goes into debt, and she has to work to pay it off because she can't get divorced because feudal Japan.
It's so crappy how they treated women back then too.
Yeah,
Seriously,
that's
like,
kind of a garbage rule.
Your debt?
Mm-hmm.
Like.
And
like,
also you have to work in a brothel to do it. Like, damn. Like if that's gonna be the way it is, can't you work as a janitor or something? Is there something less bad than a brothel?
Janitors don't make good tips, Jake.
I get, well, not as good as you do at a brothel. No, yeah. That was interesting. I love his struggle there. That's fascinating. You know. It's not technically his problem, but it's, he makes it his problem, and that's an interesting episode.
I like how they didn't dip into the bad. They could have taken that to a worse place.
Oh, certainly, yeah.
They made Fu very strong, even though she gets caught up in the brothel stuff, but I still think, like, that was very clear about the time without making women seem victimized.
Yeah, no, it's interesting how it's played because, and I think there's a couple of moments in the show where there's a woman that has to end up doing something because her husband is doing something, or just because that's the way it was. And usually the way it is played is they are kind of bound by their honor, or they're bound by their duty to do that, like work in the brothel, and it's like, that's a shitty duty. Like, that's
you're mentioning Fu getting caught up in that. I think it's a different episode in which Fu ends up in the brothel. That episode.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and that was another thing. What is it? Her father did something, and so to atone for her father's thing he did against the other clan, she just gonna go work in the brothel to pay for his thing. And it's like, this is a crappy way society works. I'm glad that feudal Japan is behind us. Probably a lot of people.
But even the honor of the women accepted it as,
because it's like, it's a duty. It's their,
honestly, like given the culture, I would think, I think that any character would have, like. I think given the culture, I think most people would have, like, I think that the male characters in the setting would probably have accepted the, like, culturally appropriate responsibility for them in Gone Forward. I think it's very much a Japanese cultural thing of, like, doing what is necessary, even if it's, like, self-sacrificing to do so.
But they counterbalanced it too with these two guys who are wanderers who don't give up on them.
Right. Yeah. No. Exactly.
They get them out of the situation.
And that's
they don't accept that culture.
Yeah, I think the protagonists in the story, all the people, all the three main characters in the story that are moving together in a group, they all, when they encounter situations, they have this whole big kind of Japanese culture around them, and they kind of bring what are a little bit more modern ideas to each of those situations. So, like, obviously they don't think that's good, that's crappy, and then Mugen just kind of doesn't give a crap about what other people are doing. He just kind of wants to do his own thing.
That's valid.
Which is fair. I'm excited to get more into his character. So, okay. So, I love that they're doing that. Each episode is very concise and cohesive, and they have a theme for them, and they've done a very good job of that. Each episode is very distinct. One thing that for the first half of the show, I kept wanting to see more about this thing about the sunflower samurai or what have you. The samurai that smells like sunflowers. We haven't gotten into that yet, and I'm absolutely positive that now that they're over the course of the first half of the show, they are going to Nagasaki because that's where apparently he is. Like they're not really following clues. They end up stumbling across this guy who knows. Oh yeah, go to Nagasaki. You'll probably find him. Except he says it in like a goofy accent.
So
unless you're from that place, then your accent's not goofy.
It's a wonderful accent. I love you.
I don't remember where it was. Was it?
It's not Finland. It's Holland.
Oh, Holland, yeah.
Holland.
He's from Holland.
Yeah.
Very different location geographically from Finland. A lot of miles between the two.
Oh my God, Mandy's having an earthquake.
But something I think is interesting is the kind of construction of the show, right? I think first episode they introduced the characters and put them together.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the next 4 or so episodes after that are intended to get the audience acquainted with those characters and to kind of like show those characters to the audience, get the audience used to them and figuring out what they are like.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of character development in there, a lot of very, very thoughtful ideas in the episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think after that, they were like, all right, we've gotten the characters established, we've gotten the audience used to them. Now we're going to start doing the like heavy character development episodes. And I think that in the latter half of the series, I expect going forward to see them to continue this, to develop all the characters, and to start pushing more heavily towards the main overarching story. And I think that it's okay that they did a very episodic episodes to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the reason they did it is
very
to get the audience.
One-shot episodes.
Yeah, very one-shot is to get the audience used to the characters before doing the heavy character development and before pushing the main story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that part of it is an artifact of the time the show came out in, when a lot more shows were being watched via television, where people might miss an episode or two and didn't watch them all in serial. It's like TNG style, right? No, anyone who's seen TNG, Deep Space Nine, or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, who has watched it all the way through, did that after watching most of the show, various bits interspersed.
Yeah, no, and I think that I think that's absolutely, it's absolutely true that the way that people access shows these days has absolutely affected the way that shows are formatted. People so much more these days are willing to do much more complex narratives and have much more like multi-part episodes, 2-episode things, just much bigger chunks of narrative than like one episode per thing. Because one episode, I mean, you can catch it on TV. If you miss 1 week, and if you have a big long narrative, you might not remember what's going on, or you might not know how to. You might never catch the ending, or you might see the last episode, but you don't know how it started. So, definitely the way that people get their media affects how shows are made. That being said, I think, like you said, that the balance of how much they had the kind of one-shot, for the most part, one-shot episodes, they had like a sprinkling of, the Sunflower Samurai in there, like a sprinkling. So it's just like, remind you that it's there, that we're going to get to it. And I think that works just perfectly. Honestly, that is very much how Firefly is. Firefly, all the episodes, very one-shot, very specific. There's a couple 2-part episodes, but very, like, this is the episode, this is what the episode's about, where the character's going to develop and grow over the series, but you can watch pretty much any episode and kind of understand it. And then there's a sprinkling of this in here. Here are the blue-handed people, 2x2 hands of blue. And then... Well, we never got that last bit, but anyways, we don't need to discuss that right now.
I would like to drift the conversation of discussion towards the topic of animation and the visuals, because I have opinions. And I would like to hear other people's opinions before speaking my own opinions, so that my opinions do not beforehand like bias or influence your opinions. Because if I speak my opinions, there's the concern that people will be like, yes, I agree, and I'll be like, I've learned nothing.
I've learned nothing. Whoa. Helen, what do you think of the animation for Samurai Champloo after watching it again?
I very much enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm trying to.
Be not
I
sideways.
can't see anybody else but you, Jake. Just so you know. I don't know why. But anyway, I loved the animation style because I felt like there were certain elements that were very muted in color, and so the purpose of the brighter colors stood out very well. I also enjoyed some of the messaging and the usage of the different backgrounds of the time period, the space that we're in,
Yeah, some
what
great
that
backgrounds.
means to us, and what that means to them, like the relationship of them in their space, which was really great to see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I certainly think the backgrounds were relatively well done. A lot of interesting buildings, bridges, backgrounds, indoors.
They break a lot of stuff, though.
Yeah, they do break a lot of stuff. Probably a lot of work to draw that. Yeah, no, I think that they did have quite an interesting diversity of sets, I guess I'll call them. Interesting diversity of locations that the story took place in, and that was interesting. They always kept it really highly detailed. They had a lot. I did like a lot of the stylized stuff they would do. In the beginning you get a slightly stylized shot, episode name or whatever. Yeah, the art style was great. The animation, I think, was also really good.
It was clean too. Their movements were so swift, and so clean, and so if one of them got hurt, like that would stumble through the entire episode. It wasn't like they just recovered. So
Yeah.
I really liked the consistency between each episode and between like their selves, like how they moved, how they walked. It was all very crisp and clean and specific.
Yeah.
So
Good.
I think that kind of gets at what I was thinking about the animation, which is primarily I'm thinking of the action animation, right? And what they do with the animation is they actually have the characters moving relatively slowly when they're moving their swords and jumping around at a pace that is very easy to follow. But they throw in there a bunch of very sudden, very swift, hard light highlights of the cuts, which happen very quickly to make it appear as if everything's happening very quickly, whilst having the animation be slow enough and easy enough to follow for the audience. And it is a beautiful execution of that. They have this slow, easy to follow animation followed by these quick cuts.
Yeah.
And it just.
So that is interesting because I agree. I think the animation in Samurai Champloo for character or Samurai Champloo for characters is really it is slow. It's a little bit methodical, and they have a lot of these quick movements that make it feel fast, feel quick, fast paced, but at the same time it's easy to follow. That's actually interesting because that is actually, I think, in contrast quite a lot with Cowboy Bebop. Because Cowboy Bebop is a lot of slow, kind of quick, fluid flowing motions. If you watch Cowboy Bebop, everything flows, beautifully animated. Everything flows, everything it moves in a very fluid way. There are not a lot of kind of quick cuts that I recall. But there's a lot of motion, and of course there's gunfire and stuff, so there's like flashy stuff too. But it does not do the same thing that I think Samurai Champloo does. I think it accomplishes a really, really interesting, easy to follow kind of animation with a very different style. Because they do have the characters move usually in still frame, still cut, still shot, and the character will move very slowly. And then there'll be a quick motion in the frame where they do something, and then they'll move another frame, move to another angle, and do something very similar. Whereas Cowboy Bebop, I think a lot of big, wide, flowy shots with backgrounds flying by and, stuff like that. Again, that makes more sense because it's science fiction, so you have, like, obviously you're not going to run into too many situations in, feudal Japan where the backgrounds are flying by. But animation is very flowy.
Nothing to do with the what are they called? Tengu? The Tengu, like, we have the background flying by at that point because he's having to run away from them, and then when it stops, it's very jolting in a good way. Like it's very expressive and like, whoo, like what is happening here? And I love when he burns the field and they're all like, "Hi, great."
I have a question about that episode in particular.
Yeah.
The character in that episode who narrates, who goes in to try to free Mugen. They're trying to depict him as being ninja-like, right? Like, he does a few things.
I mean,
like
you
they
wouldn't
have
be able
the
to follow him as well as he did if he wasn't ninja-like.
they
That's
so
what
they
I got.
they do this thing where he's like leaning against the wall and mucus starts coming out of his nose and he's like and licks it off. And I'm like, is that a ninja thing? Because I got the impression they were trying to depict him as being like a ninja, and I'm like, do ninjas
That's
do that?
something I didn't pick up on. I might
guess
have to
ninjas
watch
do that.
it.
Because they definitely tried to depict him as being like very resourceful and like badass, and he like dislocates his bones to get out.
Oh yeah, he got out of that no problem.
So yeah, I got the impression that they were.
I like too that he's like, since that incident, we haven't had a single anybody's come. And so I think that kind of set us up too, because it was an interesting parallel to, well, why did they get through? And then it was like, oh, because everybody was, the fields got burned from the Tengus and they were growing, stuff that I don't know what exactly they were growing. It was purple. It burned purple.
Holy plants.
Everybody happy.
It was holy plants, Helen. They were growing holy plants. Sacred herbs.
Very sacred herbs. Also,
sacred herbs.
I'm not sure that's how opium works, but maybe it is.
Is it opium?
I think it's probably opium. I don't know.
Okay.
Who knows? Maybe sacred herbs, like you said. So I was just watching real quick a couple of scenes just because I really wanted to verify something so that they do. So they do use single angle shots, and they do pan a little bit, but they will do this thing where they actually have the camera shake a bit as the fight scene is happening. So it's the same like background. The shot's not actually moving, but the camera is shaking a bit to kind of add that chaotic feeling of motion to the show.
That's cool.
Well,
that's very cool.
That's cool too, in a way, if you think about it, because a lot of the live action things that you watch, the camera does have a little bit of that vibration. So having it be still would be more unrealistic.
Yeah, they give they give the illusion of like a handy cam, which makes things feel more. It makes things feel more authentic, right? More like something that actually happened to do that.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
I agree.
What do you guys think about the very intentional, thoughtful elements of the show?
Tell me what you mean by the thoughtful elements of the show.
The very like in the form of characters, they will make characters to represent concepts or ideas and stick them into the show, into episodes, and be like, chew on that, audience. Like, for example, they have the giant guy who's
That was so
misunderstood. Yeah,
sad.
like they have the giant guy who's misunderstood, and he turns violent because everyone's hurting him, and then his only escape is to like join up with I. They have the assassin who only does it as a job, who doesn't actually like mean any ill will towards the people he's assassinating, and as soon as it's not in his interest, he's like, okay, I'm gonna leave now.
Well, since
They have
he doesn't get money for it, he's like, oh, my guy just died, so
Yeah,
bye.
they have the pacifistic like mob boss character who's like,
Mhm.
we must avoid bloodshed at all costs, to the point where he's not acting even when things are at their worst. And they have the
Right.
criminals who are not
Yeah.
actually breaking any laws. They're just
Mhm.
horribly immoral,
Mhm.
but the law doesn't touch them. And they throw in a
Well,
lot of
they
characters
don't
like that.
blatantly break the law in anyone's face. It was
Yeah.
hinted that they cheat.
And
Into the
So
then they
but
have the kid who breaks the law but is doing it to save his poor sickly mother, and he just needs money for medicine.
exactly.
Yeah.
because
No,
I
There's
feel,
a lot of morality.
and this is absolutely, I think, the thing that we're talking about when we're talking about interesting thematic episodes, individual thematic episodes. Yeah, there's the episode where
And the way they push and pull, like the counterbalance of that it's great.
yeah, and that I think makes each one of the episodes really interesting and memorable and unique. Those characters, those individual characters, I think they do put a lot of thought into what that character is about. The giant guy who is shunned by everybody, and he's Frankenstein, right? Poor Frankenstein. But
and he stops in the
not
end. He doesn't.
yeah.
He doesn't swing in
He
the end.
he just doesn't want anybody to hate him. He's just tired of everybody hating him because he's a monster.
Well, and that's how the bad guy uses him. It's not like he necessarily chose the bad guy, but he's oh no, they're all mean. I'm the one who's nice to you.
Yeah.
You're gonna help me take them down.
He literally had like no choice. There was nowhere else he could really go other than with the villain character. But it feels like they very intentionally throw in a lot of these elements to get the audience thinking about them, and multiple in the same episode, which is impressive because even some good anime that throw these elements in oftentimes are like, okay, one in this episode and that's the focus.
Yeah.
But very much in Samurai Champloo, they're like 2, 3, 4 in this episode, 4 different characters with these interesting like things that will get the audience thinking about it and be like, is that right? Is that wrong?
I definitely think that they very intentionally design all those things, and that creates so much interest. And that's, I think, one of the things that makes all the episodes really good. It makes them all really interesting and memorable, and it lets it so they can be kind of one-shot episodes with a sprinkling of the main big plot. But all the episodes, because of all those interesting elements, because you can sit there and think about the episode for a little bit, that's engaging. That is very engaging to have those interesting characters that you feel bad for, or that you really hate. But
compelling.
There, exactly. It doesn't have to be. It just has to be compelling.
Or that you start by hating and then you end up liking. Or even when Mugen kills that guy, you're like, do I hate Mugen for doing it? Do I not? Like, it raises a lot of those questions, and I think that it's very thought-provoking and great in that way.
I think there was one episode, I don't remember what it was, but it was an episode where I was one of the characters they were interacting with over the course of the episode. You really liked him, or you really liked the character, and they were doing something, and there was a point like near the middle of the episode, it was like, oh, they're gonna die. They're too good. They're too nice. They it's the kid who is stealing for his mother. Who was stealing.
See, I didn't get the impression he was going to die. I forgot he died.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. He's disclosing.
That is something that I love about this show is they very much have a down-to-earth kind of tone to it, a very people trying to get by kind of feel to it. And when people get caught up in these like nasty situations,
They might die.
they're not gonna survive because of plot armor. They're probably not gonna make it because this character was going down a bad road and things were looking bad for them,
Right.
and they were cornered. Like that was that moment, that the episode, they were literally cornered, and
Yeah.
it was so perfect and fitting that they died at the end. It was like, I'm glad I can trust the writers to not
Yeah.
be like, the audience will be sad if they die, but
No,
to
yeah,
be like,
absolutely.
no, this is
At the same time, they have not
What's
killed
gonna happen?
everybody.
They have not killed everybody.
They're not like out to just kill, like present
Yeah,
a situation that's
it
sad
is-
and kill the
it
character.
is not like
Yeah,
it is not
it's-
like Toward the Terra where they're like, all right, let's ruin this good character death by killing everyone else.
Holland guy was awesome, and he didn't die.
Which guy?
Holland.
Oh, Holland.
Wow,
Yeah,
missed-
best
Holland
girl.
is great.
Best girl.
Holland
for
is
sure.
best girl. Same page.
Yeah.
Same page.
But yeah, no, that's great. It's great because I do get I get bored when I sit there and every single episode I'm like, all right, that's probably gonna happen and that person's gonna die because that person has to die and then that person and it's great that like in Samurai Champloo, generally speaking, you can watch any episode and have the characters and be like, I don't know, they might be okay after this.
Right.
They
It's
might
also-
die though.
I would
Who
say it's
knows?
also Samurai Champloo. When that character died, it was satisfying because ahead of time, I think we were both like, "Oh, I think they're not gonna make it.
Yeah,
I think they're not gonna make it."
the
And it
reasons
was-
are too good. Yeah,
It was satisfying because
yeah.
it was sad, but also it was so fitting. It was
No,
so
exactly. And I think
They're-
that was the reason. Like that, it is. There are two. I feel like there are kind of two kinds of prediction that when I watch films and when I watch films with the people that I do, and I think there's the two kinds of the first kind is this show is so bad it's obvious what they're about to do. That's what's going to happen. And the other
that's
kind,
what I thought you were referring to at
Yeah,
first.
that-
Alright.
No, not that. The other kind of prediction is, wow, this is great. It's constructed really well. And I think it would be really fitting, or like it would work really well if that person died. And this is why
And then it pays off, and you're like, yes,
Yeah.
or it doesn't, and you're like, ugh.
yes, but no.
yes, but no. Oh God, I knew that. Yeah, no. And this, I think, probably the best example of this is from Game of Thrones. So Game of Thrones spoilers. If you mute your mic for like 30 seconds, but like at the end of whatever that season was, when Jon Snow dies, when Jon Snow gets stabbed, everybody's really sad. I was like, oh, it's okay, he's gonna be fine, and he's gonna be fine because if he died, that would have been really bad writing because of all of the different like things that they had set up and for all of the different plot threads they had put in and all the different conversations that happened just with it. Like if he would have died there, that would have been bad writing. And I know at that point those people were not bad writers, so he's gonna be fine. Somebody's gonna come back. Like, there's no way he can't. If the writers are semi-competent, he can't be dead right now. So, and that's very much so. No more spoilers.
May I Game of
Give it
Thrones
this.
it a little too now that you had that reference?
Wait, what?
Now that you're referencing Game of Thrones, I was thinking the song thing, like how like desperate like she needed to get out of that situation where she was gonna marry this horrible, horrible human.
Yeah.
And like it was like you almost wanted her to die so she could escape it.
Right.
But they took it so well. And then to tie it back into Champloo, I feel like they do a lot of that too. Where it's just like her, like when she was gonna try and kill herself off the bridge.
Yeah.
Before she went to the brothel. And then like he ends up rescuing her, Jean does.
Yeah.
And so like it was just like, oh, but did you want her to die? Like would
Yeah.
it have been better for her? I don't know.
No, it's interesting.
Yeah.
It was a very interesting episode. That was a very thoughtful episode. And I feel bad for John.
Jean.
Gene, whatever. We've established that I don't know what his name is. This is canon. I do not know what his name is. I do not know what any characters' names are. I refer to them as the hot-headed one and the quiet one. And
A chaotic neutral.
I'll just refer to them by their alignment.
Lawful neutral.
Let's not go there.
What, Nick? You don't think that the alignment system in D&D is inherently flawed?
It's far too... yeah. No, it's perfect. It really is a perfect system, but... yeah. That was a joke.
I don't know what you call my character in D&D. Anyway, that's off topic.
Off topic.
I mean, if we want to digress.
But yeah, so yes, I loved the characters. Loved the animation. Are there any other aspects of the show? I didn't like the intro. Yeah, it was. I didn't hate the intro. I didn't like it. It's not my tonally something I say is that I'm not really into buddy cop movies. I don't like.
I didn't get the same feel, but I kind of understand where you're coming from.
Yeah,
I'm like, okay.
I appreciate the tone they're setting. I appreciate the tone they're trying to set with the intro. It's not a tone that appeals to me. I think the actual visuals of the intro were great. If they had I like the Cowboy Bebop intro because of the jazziness of it. It honestly probably goes down to the fact that I'm not really into the style of music they were playing. Maybe it's just because of the song they were using. So I didn't like the music to the intro.
And to me, I can see both sides of it. I can see how it was slow because when I first watched it, it was so slow. It was just okay, let's go. Okay, where are we going with this?
Yeah.
Is the show going to have that same pace? But I thought it was very counterbalanced because the show felt way faster paced in a great way, whereas the intro did not, and so they were opposites of each other. I really liked it watching it now more, but I also watched part of it at regular speed and the other part at 1.5 times speed.
Yeah.
So at 1.5 times speed, that was really interesting and cool. And I don't really condone that, Noah.
Bad. Don't watch it.
I condone up to 4 times speed.
Oh my god!
I cannot condone higher than 4 times speed because the software I use for changing video speed cuts the audio if I go over 400%, so I can't actually push past that. Depending on the show, you can hit 400% and be comfortable. Probably Samurai Champloo, you're going to be a bit lower than that. 300, 350 is pretty comfy for me if I'm really getting into a groove. It depends.
At 1.5, it was great.
I watched it at the normal speed.
Even at 1.5, they were talking fast.
Normal speed worked.
Huh?
The normal speed worked for me.
Me and Jake watched it together in slow motion.
I don't even know
normal
how to
speed.
the human language that fast.
It takes, you gotta build to it. You gotta build to it, right? This is why I can't watch. Yeah. You gotta.
Okay.
That's an interesting. That is an interesting discussion.
It does depend on the voice actors. Heavily on the voice actors. Certain voice actors can't even hit 200 because I'm like, what are you even saying with your mouth?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
That is also that is also an interesting topic that we should discuss at some point. Is the speed of which maybe not next week, because I think we were thinking about watching the second half of Samurai Champloo and wrapping up our thoughts on the series. But I would be interested in having a conversation about A, sub versus dub, B, the speed that you can watch, not necessarily just anime, but media at 1.5 times speed, 2 times speed, etc., etc., and any other, random topics that people might be interested in discussing, because I do think that those are interesting things that we should touch on. So maybe not next week, but maybe if we're feeling it, we can think about doing it after that one, because certainly there's a lot of stuff to talk about there.
I think certain things benefit from it. Sometimes I do. If there's a lot going on, slow down to below 100% speed to
No.
watch it.
No, I said not this week. Stop it.
No, actually, I was gonna change it back. Anyway. I was gonna ask what.
Thank you. Bad strategy. Okay, Alan, what were you saying?
I was gonna ask what you guys thought of the ending.
The ending
Like
of.
the trailer.
Wait, what?
The credits.
Oh, the credits.
I don't remember.
Oh, I don't remember the credits.
Literally.
No, so okay,
I have a half vague memory of something going on.
So the
Seriously?
problem.
I'm gonna. Oh.
I think did we watch it on Netflix, Noah? I think we watched it on Netflix, and the problem is after the main show is over, the credits like minimize.
It minimizes
like,
it on
Do
Netflix.
you want to watch, or here's the next episode thing, and like the sound kind of goes down.
I thought they were beautiful. I love the song. I thought it was like a calm down from the show. Like it was kind of like the beginning. So I think the arc, if you consider like the arc of the intro to the ending, it was very interesting that it started slow and slow, and that the middle was the meat. That it, the
let me ask a question here. Let me ask a question. Okay, the intro. Now I didn't dislike the intro from a mechanical perspective of how it was constructed and what it was doing, right? I didn't personally like the intro because I thought it was too mellow, and like things that mellow kind of stressed me out and make me feel anxious.
Right.
What was the thing with the like earth, water, and fire and the animals in the background? Was it trying to like be like this character represents fire and this character earth and this character water? What was the like metaphorical significance and stuff going on there? Because that was like, I don't have the cultural context. This is just going over my head.
So there's a bunch I want to say about this.
But can you say it before you have to leave?
I have to leave.
Oh, yes.
So probably
Sorry.
not.
We forgot to mention Helen's going to have to leave us in just a couple minutes. She has to leave 10 minutes early.
Just speak at 3 times speed.
I got to like leave in like a minute. But
okay.
What I want to say is the significance is really interesting because I think like a lot of it is parallels and metaphors to what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also very like how it's tied into today, because it's a very contemporary look too, because they have them like people walking in the streets. They didn't have that back then. It was in the 1600s. So like to me it was very interesting how they used those to kind of give you like this propulsion towards it, but also like the like standard kimono that she's wearing that's very beautiful and elegant, and like what that signifies, like her as a person. And I don't know, it's just really interesting. Mm-hmm. There's a lot to it. I think you could dissect that all like a whole other show.
Right, yeah, no, for sure. All right, well, Mandy.
I know, I gotta go.
No, do you have any final thoughts you want to leave us on? We will. I'm gonna make sure I pay attention to the outro of the show so that next week we can discuss that. Okay. Any final thoughts you have on Samurai Champloo for the first half of the show, before you have to take off?
First half of the show, I loved a lot of the visual elements. Mm-hmm. I loved the show at large. Mm-hmm. I agree with you. When I first watched it, like the intro didn't strike me at all. And now that I've watched it 10 years later, I really do it. So it's just a little like different. It's just different. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Best Girl Holland.
Yeah, definitely.
Best Girl is definitely the country of Holland.
So I'll leave you at that.
Cool. Thanks. Hey, thanks for joining us, Helen. Have a lovely day, huh?
Bye.
See you later.
Bye. Bye.
Oh, and yep, there it is. Our thing's all
messed
up.
I think if you can, you should put a Hollish flag up.
Oh, ooh, that was not what. Oh, hey, how did this even happen? Well, so Noah, why don't you give me any final thoughts that you have on Samurai Champloo while I fix this
I think Holland
fix
is a
this.
solid nation. I think we should see more of it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Holland is a wonderful country.
For some reason, when I Google image search Holland, all I see are like rainbow-colored fields and windmills.
Mm-hmm.
Holland is a magical place.
It is a magical place. Oh.
Yeah, it's a magical place. So Mandy's not here, so all of her opinions are wrong. Let's just dismiss those.
Dismiss everything she had to say.
Dismiss all of that. Holland's a great nation. Definitely, best girl is the nation of Holland. The accents in the dub. The accents in the dub are interesting until I'm talking to myself. I like the show. I like how thoughtful it is. I like thoughtful shows that make me think. And I feel like Samurai Champloo is a show that the writers very much try to encourage thought in the audience, and I think that's a good thing, and more anime should do that. And they do so in a very good way, right? They do so by putting forward a bunch of characters to represent different ideas or perspectives and just leaving the audience to figure stuff out on their own, right? The
Right.
Samurai Champloo doesn't directly go like, this is right and this is wrong. They're like, this is the world and these are a bunch of people in it. And gritty realism, characters get dead, and people working hard to earn their daily bread in the form of strangely shaped, like, oval coins. They're not really ovals. It's nice.
Yeah, no, I've enjoyed the first half of the show thus far. We went into it and I was not 100% certain. Okay, so I feel like my face should be showing up on the left side, but I am not. So
Put in your place a flag of Holland.
that's a whole lot of work. That's a whole lot of work, Noah. Well,
Very well.
so
All right.
I'm just gonna switch back to 4-person. There we go.
Um,
And this is not the
Animations.
same.
So the animations, I think, are one of the strongest points of the show. I think probably the strongest point is just that thoughtfulness of the writers and the ideas they put forward that they encourage the audience to think about. And the characters are pretty good. Characters are pretty solid. I expect in the next half of the show to see a greater emphasis on character backstory episodes, on character development, and on following the main story, the main arc of the show with the Sunflower Samurai. Probably a few of those episodic bits that are just like Monster of the Week kind of episodes. But I expect a lot more focus on those primary elements of character backstories and Sunflower Samurai overarching plot.
Yeah,
What do you
no.
expect?
Okay, so I'm giving up on the camera. I agree. I think that probably in the next half of the show we're going to get a lot more with respect to that main overarching story. Probably going to get a lot more heavy episodes. We're having probably a lot more emotional impact. The characters are probably going to have their own values pushed a lot more. Certainly, I'd actually expect to see some kind of conflict between all the main characters in the latter half of the show. And probably big bad, something big and bad that's gonna happen. Character problem, some big bad overarching antagonist. Please go ahead.
Do you have a waifu, or is this setting just a little bit too gritty and realistic?
Waifu. That's a good question. Do I have a waifu? How about You know, honestly, if I had a waifu, it probably, yeah, and I don't think I'd have one. I just, Holland is best girl.
Holland is best girl.
No, that's about it. Yeah, don't really have a waifu.
God bless Holland.
Everybody in the show is relatively unbalanced. They're all from feudal Japan. We have a vastly different system of morals, and I don't think I could deeply connect with anybody really from feudal Japan. Maybe though, who knows? But probably not. I think chances are slim.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with that. I think that
on a fundamental level, you have to have a value system that is at least vaguely similar, and I feel like it wouldn't work out in the long run. So
yeah, the morality is kind of in the form of that like honor system that's a little bit detached from more contemporary values.
Yep. Yes. So unfortunately no waifu this week. So next week we're going to be watching the second half of Samurai Champloo. That's going to be November 10th, Saturday, November the 10th, 2018. We will be doing the second half, and really we'll be doing the whole of Samurai Champloo, because you can't just look at the second half. You got to also look at the first half if you've already seen the first half. So we'll look at the rest of the show and wrap up our feelings on it in the entirety of what's going on over there. So, Bad Strategy, tell me, what is going on for you this week in the world of Twitch? Because I bet it's the same thing I've got going on.
Oh my gosh. I was thinking of playing Thea the Awakening because Slavic mythology is cool and weird and has a weird form of Zeus.
That is true. That is true and awesome. So yes, both myself, the Big Bad Moon, and Bad Strategy on our respective YouTube channels, the Big Bad Moon and Bad Strategy Gaming, will be playing Thea the Awakening this week. That's what we've got going on the rest of the week. I think it's Thursday. We're going to do Thursday afternoon. Did we decide on that? That seems like a pretty good... Sure! Why not? It seems like a good day. Thursday afternoon, 5 o'clock. We're going to be doing that once a week. Hopefully not Thea the Awakening once a week, but a game once a week. I don't know how long Thea the Awakening is going to take. But it looks delightful. So if you'd like to join us for that, if you like the video games, please. That will be fun. Probably play for a couple hours. Something like that. See how it goes. Yep, and then of course on next Saturday, of course, we're going to be doing the second half of Samurai Champloo. Any final thoughts for the rest of the episode? We do have 2 minutes left. Wow. I feel like this is the first time. Well, it's because Helen 3D left. There's nothing much left to talk about, I suppose. It was a good show.
We did it. We won.
Victory to the end.
This is what it feels like.
It's a good feel, except for that whole camera thing. I really uber failed on that. Don't know why it's doing that.
Oh no, everyone's just gonna stare at me now.
Oh my god, so beautiful. You're looking a bit stubbly there, Noah.
Oh yes. Thank you. Got a bit of stubble. I'm gonna work on that. All right, cut it.
All right,
we're done.
All right, we're done. Thank you. Bye, ladies and gentlemen. Have a lovely day. So long.